Hey everybody, welcome in to another edition of To The Point. Hope you're doing well on this Monday evening. I'm here live tonight to start off a four-part series where I will preview every NFL division before next Thursday. Next Thursday night being the NFL kickoff, Ravens, Chiefs in Kansas City. Can't wait. We got a little taste with the preseason and with college football, which started on Saturday with a great game, and there'll be games Thursday and Friday and Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Oh, I can't wait for this weekend. It's going to be phenomenal. But before we get to the NFL, we got to know what's happening in the divisions. So this evening, I'm going to be talking about the AFC and NFC East. If you are doing fantasy drafts, which God help you if you are, if you're just want to be updated on what's happening, where players are, who you should be liking, I'll be talking about the divisions. Then prior to the start of the season, I will be doing a preview podcast where I make predictions when it comes to every playoff team in the AFC and the NFC. So that's forthcoming. And I just enjoy doing this. I enjoy doing the research, helps me become more prepared for the season. So that's what's on tap tonight. I hope you guys enjoy them because there's 3 other shows after tonight coming your way over the next little bit. Also in the middle of that, we'll be doing regular shows recapping what's happening in the world of sports. Although there was big news out of the Dallas Cowboys camp today, which we will get to later on in the podcast because we are talking about the NFC East later on. So 2 birds, 1 stone. AFC East. It was the Patriots division for a long time. Tom Brady, Bill Belichick. Well, Tom Brady is now the lead analyst for Fox with Kevin Burkhardt. It's unfortunate because I really like Greg Olson. That's neither here nor there. But he's now in the booth calling games. He will be calling Cowboys-Browns in a week from Sunday. But also Bill Belichick, now on the Pat McAfee show and doing his own podcast with Jim Gray and Peter King, a member of the media. That's over in New England. We'll get to New England last, but it's just important to acknowledge this. Yes, the Bills have been atop the AFCs for some time, but the Bills have been a team that you look at and go, should they be better? Should they be winning more games? Why haven't they gotten to a Super Bowl? And will the Bills remain on top of the AFC East? It's the big question going into this season because I think the AFC East is a very tight division. A lot of good teams, a lot of interest. And I want to start with the team that I think is the hardest to predict, the hardest team to figure out, and that's the New York Jets. The New York Jets, who have 2 left feet, who can't seem to do anything right, have one of the most polarizing players in NFL history at quarterback, head into this season with massive expectations, and have some people saying if they stay healthy, they could be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl. That's right, better than the Kansas City Chiefs. The Jets, despite the fact that they had an awful season where Aaron Rodgers was hurt on his 6th snap, and they had to play Zach Wilson, who's now a member of the Denver Broncos, and they had to play Tim Boyle, who's now a member of the Commanders, I believe, probably would be cut. Multiple quarterbacks, lots of failure. But despite all of that, Robert Saleh is back as head coach. Aaron Rodgers is back under center. Nathaniel Hackett remains the offensive coordinator despite some failures last season. And the Jets head into this season making a lot of changes outside of the key positions. Mike Williams, who's a wide receiver with the Chargers, has had an interesting career where you've seen him be a Pro Bowler, incredibly productive, but also a guy incredibly injury plagued, has missed a lot of time, but the Jets scoop him up and say, we'll give him a chance. They pick up future Hall of Fame left tackle Tyron Smith from the Dallas Cowboys. They don't re-sign him. He's had neck issues for a long time, has missed at least 3 games in the last 4 seasons. He comes in. They trade for Morgan Moses from the Baltimore Ravens. So Morgan Moses, who's been around the league, comes in, will join the offensive line. John Simpson also comes over from the Baltimore Ravens in free agency to the new revamped offensive line. Tyrod Taylor becomes the backup quarterback for the Jets. Chuck Clark comes over from the Ravens. And they also have Hassan Reddick, who remains holding out because he wants a trade after he was traded from the Philadelphia Eagles, him and the Jets not being able to work out a new contract. They lose Mekhi Becton, who's now a member of the Eagles. Randall Cobb retired, and I mentioned the quarterbacks who are gone. The Jets are a really good team. They are. They have one of the best cornerbacks in football in Sauce Gardner. They have one of the best wide receivers in football in Garrett Wilson. Their offensive line is much improved, and for the last number of years, the New York Jets have been one of the better defensive teams. You look at DJ Reed, you look at Chuck Clark, Sauce Gardner in that secondary. Extremely good. Breece Hall healthy, Aaron Rodgers healthy. They drafted Braylon Allen out of the University of Wisconsin. They have depth. They have a solid team full of skill players. Now, Morgan Moses, not young. Tyron Smith, not young. Mike Williams, constantly injured. Aaron Rodgers, 40 years old, coming off of an Achilles tear. That doesn't scream optimistic. That doesn't scream it's going to be all sunshines and rainbows. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of potential pitfalls for the New York Jets. But to me, they are the best team in this division. To me, they should be the front runner going in to win the AFC East. Aaron Rodgers is 40. He didn't play his best football towards the end in Green Bay. All true. But I don't know if they wanted him in Green Bay anymore. I don't think he wanted to be in Green Bay anymore. The Jordan Love angle was there. It was kind of weird. It was evident that Jordan Love was the future and Aaron was on his way out. So he gets 6 snaps last year. We don't know how that would have went. He was injured on Monday Night Football 9/11, carrying out the flag. And that was it. We never saw him again. We only hear him interviewed on the Pat McAfee show where he will make a comment that half the world doesn't like, half the world likes. And then it's dissected for the week. And that's all you can really go on. There's nothing to do with his play or how he's doing or anything other than Aaron Rodgers, this right-wing extremist conspiracy theory guy. All of that probably is true. But he's also one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the position, and nobody, despite how much you might hate the guy, you can't take that away from him. He's only been in 1 Super Bowl, which is the biggest knock on his career, but I will add Dan Marino is one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, and he's only been to 1 Super Bowl, and he didn't even win the Super Bowl he was in. So it happens to all-time greats. Doesn't automatically mean, okay, you're going to be super successful. He went to 1 Super Bowl. He's trying to get back to another one. And this is a great opportunity because he has a great team and they have a ton of pressure on them. To me, he can be as good as Josh Allen if he's healthy. Josh Allen's a lot younger. Josh Allen's a much different quarterback. But Aaron Rodgers, at his apex, is better than Josh Allen ever could think to be. And yeah, he's 40, but Tom Brady was pretty good at 40. We've seen quarterbacks play good well into Aaron, his mentor, the guy who he took the job from, Brett Favre, got to an AFC championship game at age 40 with the Minnesota Vikings. So it can happen. It's not crazy talk. Looking at the Jets, if they are going to fail, to me, it's two things. It's health and it's play calling with Nathaniel Hackett, because I don't trust him. He was an awful head coach in Denver, should never have been a head coach. He gets this job because he knows Aaron, and he's kind of been a nepotism guy where, I know Aaron, he's a buddy of mine, okay, hire me. It's not because of merit. It's not because he's some offensive genius like a Sean McVay or a Mike McDaniel. You get the job because of something that you produced. So that concerns me with this team going forward. But Aaron can overcome that. Aaron can outsmart that problem. I expect the Jets to struggle a little bit out of the gate. Because you got to wait for this offensive line to gel. Wait for this offensive line to come together. If you look at it, Tyron Smith, John Simpson, Joe Tippmann, and Morgan Moses were not on this team last year. That's 4 of the 5 offensive linemen are new pieces. That takes time for everybody to fit in, everybody to gel. Not to mention, they opened their season against the San Francisco 49ers, who were in the Super Bowl last year. Still have one of the better rosters in football. But outside of that, if you look at the New York Jets schedule, open in San Francisco, then go to Tennessee, host the Patriots, host the Broncos, at the Vikings in London, England. Then they come back to play the Bills. That first 5-6 games, that's not a tough schedule. They easily could be 5-1. Lose to the Niners, beat the Titans, crush the Patriots, beat the Broncos, beat the Vikings, and then you have the Bills at home. They have tough games. They got the Texans, it's at home. Colts at home. They play the Dolphins twice. Obviously, they have to go to Jacksonville. They play the Bills twice. They have the Rams late in the season, but that's at home. I think it's a favorable schedule. I think I could see the Jets being a 12-win team. Lost to the 49ers in there. Lose to the Bills once. Lose to the Dolphins once. And either a loss to the Rams or the Jaguars, potentially. Do I think this team could win 12 games, potentially flirt with 13 if they're healthy? Yes, I do. I picked the Jets to win the AFC East last year, and it was a complete flop, and it hit me in the face. And if they are injured, I will be wrong again. But they are better than the Dolphins, and they are better than the Bills, and they're certainly better than the Patriots, who stink with their roster right now. And I'm picking the Jets to win the division. As crazy as that might be, but I trust in Aaron. Crazy also, and I just think this team is too talented to fail for a second straight season. Now, who's the second best team in the division? It's interesting because the Bills and Dolphins were both playoff teams last year. The Dolphins have been a playoff team the last 2 seasons under Mike McDaniel. However, they have not won a playoff game in 22 years. Went to Buffalo, lost, then went to Kansas City in that freezing cold game last year where multiple people lost toes. They lost that one. So while the Mike McDaniel Tua Tagovailoa experiment has been a success, it's been a success to a point. This offseason, Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa got big extensions from the Dolphins. Tua was healthy last year, was top 5 in passing yards. Faults, certainly, Tua, but there's no denying that he is a very good quarterback. There's no denying that he is elite. He is a great thrower of the football. He's accurate. He does a good job at getting himself out of jams. Now, you might look at it and go, if you haven't read this, he lost a lot of weight this offseason. He's not as big as he was the last couple years. He's hoping to be a little more dynamic, hoping to run the football a little bit more. I don't love that because I don't think he's a great runner. Throwing left-handed, I think it's awkward for him. So I don't love that. But he's very good at getting the ball out of his hands and not taking huge damage. What happened this offseason, though, for the Dolphins? How about this? Vic Fangio, defensive coordinator, says, I'm sick of Miami. Something happened. He didn't want to coach there anymore. He wanted to go home to Philly, his hometown team. He becomes the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia. We'll talk about Philadelphia in a little bit. So they lose Vic Fangio. Christian Wilkins, first-round pick of the Dolphins, you could say the anchor of their defense the last 4 or 5 years, came out of Clemson. Great player, dominant at his position, incredibly valuable, healthy. He gets $84 million to go become a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. Can you blame him? Good for him. He leaves. They lose Robert Hunt, a very good guard, to Carolina, hoping to improve the life of Bryce Young. Xavier Howard retires at cornerback. Andrew Van Ginkel, who's been a up-and-comer, making no money, being very successful for the Dolphins, he gets a bag. He goes to Minnesota to play under former head coach Brian Flores. And Brandon Jones leaves the team as well. So their defense took a beating. Their defense lost a lot of key pieces. Their defense is not as good as it was last year. They bring in Bradley Chubb. Remember, they traded for him last year from the Denver Broncos, but he's out for the first half of the season. He tore his Achilles. He's not going to be. Jalen Phillips might be ready for the start of the season, but he's had a lot of knee injuries. How productive is he going to be? Calais Campbell played at the U, now coming to play for the Dolphins. Full circle moment for the big man. But he's a little long in the tooth. He's been in the NFL a long time. He's 35 years old. They bring back Emmanuel Ogbah, who they cut earlier in the offseason. I love when you bring back players that you didn't want. That screams confidence. Yes, Javon Holland is a stud. Canadian. Love him. Jalen Ramsey can still do it at corner. He's awesome. All-pro type player. Jordan Poyer comes over from the Buffalo Bills, who very solid pro. And when healthy, he's great. But it's a different defense. New defensive coordinator, a lot of new players. It's going to take some work. Can their pass rush live up to it? You look right now, Zach Sealer, Benito Jones, Calais Campbell, Jalen Phillips. Bradley Chubb, not ready. So Bradley Chubb will at least miss the first 4 games of the season. That was announced today from Mike McDaniel. If you're on the physically unable to perform list, you have to miss at least the first 4 games. And then the team can pull you off. So that's kind of what the PUP list is. The Miami Dolphins defense is different. if they're going to win games this year and if they're going to be a playoff team for the third straight year, which I think is going to be incredibly difficult for them to do, it's going to be about their offense. Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, both guys got extensions in the offseason. They add Odell Beckham Jr. to be the third wheel. Jonnu Smith comes over, become a tight end. They love those blocking tight ends. But the way they use little white wide receivers like Braxton Berrios and River Craycraft, they have some good stuff. They also love using their fullback, Alec Ingold, who's become kind of a star in Miami, playing under Mike McDaniel's system. Raheem Mostert comes back, who led the NFL in touchdowns last year. Devon Achane, Jalen Wright comes over from the University of Tennessee. Go Volunteers. So I love their offense. The Miami Dolphins have a top 5 offense in football, period. Any team, anywhere, they have a better offense than the Jets. They have a better offense than the Buffalo Bills in their own division. I don't think Tua is a better quarterback than Aaron or Josh Allen, but that doesn't mean you don't have as good of offense because sometimes it's just the players around you. I say this is going to be a really tough season because they've been good. So you look at the way they go. Open against the Jaguars. Then host the Bills Thursday night after they play on Sunday. So quick game. At Seattle. Host Tennessee, Monday Night Football, Patriots, Colts, Cardinals. I like their first month and a change. Then at the Bills in November. At the Rams. Host the Raiders. Host the Patriots. At Green Bay. They love playing in the cold. Host the Jets. At the Texans. Host the 49ers. At Cleveland, tough game, and then they close at the Jets. Do they win 10 games? I'm not so sure. It's a tough 10 games if they're going to have to play really well. They're going to have to beat every team they're supposed to beat. Go into Seattle and upset them, tough thing to do. Split with the Bills, they haven't been recently. Beat the Patriots twice, get the Titans, defeat the Colts in Indy. Cardinals are sneaky. We'll get to them when we talk about the NFC West. Rams are tough. The Rams are going to be good again this year. Raiders stink. Packers at Green Bay, Frozen Tundra, November 28th. They're not winning that game. At Texans, not easy. Host the 49ers 3 days before Christmas. Yeesh. At Cleveland, late December. And then at the Jets. Their last 2 games of the season are on the road. I think the Dolphins are a fringe playoff. They'll be in it to the end. I'm picking division winners in this. I'm not going through every playoff team because I still have to go through it. I'm going through schedules. We'll do that at a later date. But I do think the Dolphins will finish above 500. I do think the Dolphins will be in that mix. I have a huge respect for Mike McDaniel, so I think he can keep them in it. But again, it's going to be about their offense if they're going to, because their defense, I don't expect to be that good. Their defense is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the majority of it. I think they hope their defense is surprisingly good, because I don't think internally they think it's that great, because it isn't. In pro sports, you can't just replace really good players because you don't have the money. They gave Tua a bunch. They gave Tyreek Hill $30 million a year at 31, risky. Gave Jalen Waddle a bunch of money to stay. They didn't have money to give out. They got to pay Javon Holland after this season. They got to make decisions about the future of their team. Dolphins will be a factor. How big of a factor, that remains to be seen. Let's go to Buffalo. Highmark Stadium. The Bills have been right there, playing the Chiefs, playing them tough, but never being able to get over the hump. So far, every team in this division, their coach should be on the hot seat if the season doesn't go well. Mike McDaniel, a lesser extent, because I don't think the Dolphins are going to fire him. But if the Jets miss the playoffs, Robert Saleh will be fired. If the Bills, even if they make the playoffs and say they lose in a wild card game or they lose in the divisional round, I think Sean McDermott will be gone. He's been there a long time. He's been there with Brandon Beane, the GM. They've drafted Josh Allen. They've gone through players. They traded for Stephon Diggs. They built a team that they said publicly can compete with Kansas City, can be the best team in the AFC. And they've been wrong. They've gotten to one AFC championship game. They've never gotten to a Super Bowl with Josh Allen. And after the loss last year, where it was kind of ugly, they've made some changes. Stephon Diggs was traded to the Houston Texans. They trade him to another really good team in the conference. They wanted a fresh start. They wanted to move on. And Stephon gets to try something new. They also let Gabe Davis go to Jacksonville to play with Trevor Lawrence. So they had to rebuild their receiving core, really. Started by getting Curtis Samuel from the Washington Commanders. He comes over, versatile player, can do a number of different things. They had Marquez Valdez-Scantling from the Kansas City Chiefs, multiple-time Super Bowl champion. They draft Keon Coleman, a big wide receiver from Florida State University, who I think can be really good. Big receiver. He might turn out to be more of a tight end, but he's got game. He's got range. He could be an NBA player. They already had Khalil Shakir, who I love, who I think is their best receiver on the roster right now. I think he's going to be asked to do a lot. We'll see if he can manage the workload. They also added Mac Hollins, who's played for a number of different teams, including the Miami Dolphins in their own division. Not to mention you have Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, the two-headed tight end monster, who will become a huge part of their offense. So it's Josh Allen having a very new receiving core, a bunch of guys that really haven't proved that much at the NFL level, that want to come in and be the number one guy, be the go-to person. Coleman trying to establish himself as a rookie. MVS leaves Kansas City to go to Buffalo so he can remain playing for a team that is vying for a Super Bowl. Two tight ends that expect a lot of catches. And you also have James Cook, who's been the feature back for a couple years from Georgia. Go Bulldogs. I'm intrigued by this receiving core. It's not sexy. It's not Stephon Diggs where you look at Stephon Diggs and you know who that guy is. But Josh Allen would force him the football. I don't think Josh Allen's going to be forced to throw it to anybody on this team. Because Keon Coleman's a rookie. He has no right to say, you have to give me the football. No, shut up. Curtis Samuel is a gadget wide receiver who I think he'll rush. I think they'll use him on end arounds. I think they're going to use him in the slot. He's going to be incredibly creative. It wouldn't shock me if he's used on special teams on this team. So he's never been a number one guy. NVS, very much a number two, number three guy. Throw it to him in big games. And Shakir, to me, is the guy who they expect to be the number one guy, expect to be lead the team in receptions, lead the team in receiving yards, likely lead the team in touchdown receptions. So it's Josh Allen going, if that guy's open, I'm going to throw him the football. If everybody's covered, I will scramble for a couple yards and see what I can do myself with my legs. But I think he should do that less moving forward, especially with the way he's played and just the wear and tear on that body. But it's an intriguing offense. Not brand name, not sexy, but I think it can work. But you look in the offseason, they lose Stephon, they lose Gabe, as we talked about. They had to cut Tre'Davious White, who was a great corner, but he tore his ACL 2 years ago, tore his Achilles last year. Just can't stay healthy. It's a shame. Mitch Morse, their center, moves on. Jordan Poyer is now a member of the Miami Dolphins. So a lot of losses, some veterans, some guys, leaders of their team. But also Mitch Trubisky comes in as their backup quarterback again. Taylor Rapp comes over from the Rams. Teron Johnson becomes a member of their cornerback team. And this team's brand new because you look at their defense, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, gone. Christian Benford, Rasul Douglas comes over from Green Bay. Taylor Rapp. They're trying to see if this team can work. They keep Greg Rousseau and Ed Oliver and AJ Espinosa, like them all. Von Miller, hoping to have a productive season after a disaster last year. Damar Hamlin might get snaps for the Buffalo Bills this year. Christian Benford, they're going to see if he can hang, if he can be an everyday NFL cornerback. You're keeping the quarterback, you're keeping the head coach, but you're revamping the team. Buffalo definitely went the Kansas City route of, we don't need brand names. We have a great quarterback. We have a good team. Let's just try to build a team. We don't got sexy pieces. If you look at it, their offense, they don't have a Travis Kelce where you have that big of a star. It's Josh Allen and a bunch of guys you're hoping are great. And a defense where you go, we got to hope our pass rush is really good because we don't know if this secondary is going to hold up. But I'm more interested in this Bills team than I have in multiple years because past years I knew they weren't going to beat Kansas City. The Bills start their season hosting the Arizona Cardinals, at the Dolphins on a Thursday night, host the Jags, at Baltimore, at Houston, at the Jets, host the Titans, at Seattle. They get to play the Chiefs in November. They have to host the 49ers. They go to the Rams. They go to Detroit. Jets, obviously, they play the Patriots 2 of their last 3 games. Those are great. But they got a tough schedule. Tough home games. Chiefs aren't afraid of the cold weather. Go to Indy. Go to Seattle with the 12th man. The Bills and Dolphins, they could win their division, yes, because the Jets are so crazy and they are so up in the air. But I look at these two teams and I like the Jets' schedule more. I like the Jets' team overall. And I think the Bills on offense and the Dolphins on defense are going to have to figure out who they are and what they do well, while the Jets have been constructed. Other than Aaron, who I think can do it because he's Aaron, their defense has been their defense. Their offense has been their offense. They're just waiting for somebody to be able to run it that's somewhat functional, that's not Zach Wilson or Tim fucking Boyle. This AFC East is loaded, and either one of those 3 teams could win the division, and I'm serious about that. It's that tight. A team that isn't going to win the division, a team that's not going to make the playoffs, and very well could be one of the bottom 5 teams in football, are the New England Patriots. New England fired Bill Belichick, despite the fact that they said it was mutual terms, whatever bullshit they came up with. Lies. They fired him. They didn't want him anymore. We've been through this. We've talked about it lots. When they say it's mutually parting ways, it never is. You're fired. Get the fuck out. Bill Belichick, Steve Belichick, gone. Steve's coaching at UW. So you mentioned Bill Belichick, now media darling, working for everybody. So Gerard Mayo was on the staff, former Patriot, is now the head coach, and he's taken over for one of the best coaches in NFL history. Not easy at all, and a lot happened this offseason. They traded Mac Jones to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's now the backup to Trevor Lawrence. So the Mac Jones experiment is over. They bring back Jacoby Brissett, who was a backup quarterback a long time ago, backed up Brady for a while porn star Jimmy was still there. So he comes back on a 1-year, $8 million deal. They bring in some veterans. Antonio Gibson comes over from the Washington football team. Decent running back, $11 million. Austin Hooper, Simone Takitaki from the Cleveland Browns. Jalen Reagor comes over from Minnesota. KJ Osborne comes over from Minnesota. And then we get to the draft. And with the third overall pick, the New England Patriots select Drake May from the University of North Carolina. Drake May, talented prospect, has looked really good in the preseason. And the big question for the Patriots is not, when do the Patriots start playing? Because you don't really want to watch them. It's, when is Drake May going to touch the field this year for the Patriots? The Patriots are not going to be good, but something that they haven't done is build a good offensive line. Shakuma Okorafor, Cole Strange, David Andrews, who I like at center, Sidi Sal, Michael Winu, who comes over from Carolina. They were getting crushed last night against the Washington Commanders' backups. Jacoby Brissett got killed. And the thing was, Gerard Mayo said today, Drake May's been our best quarterback in camp. He's outplayed Jacoby Brissett. But it's not that easy. See, if they had a competent offensive line, Drake May would be starting when they open their season. It wouldn't be a discussion. But because they are so inept, they're going, we can't put him out there. He'll be injured like Anthony Richardson was for the Colts, and we got to do something about this. Because whether it's Brissett or Bailey Zappi or Joe Milton Jr. III, who they took from the Tennessee Volunteers, who cares if they get hurt? They're not the future of the Patriots. They believe it's Drake May. Kendrick Bourne, I like. They bring him back. Demario Douglas, Pop Douglas, we'll see. Tyquan Thornton, KJ Osborne, Kayshon Boutte, Jalen Reagor, Jalen Polk from UW. Hunter Henry's still around somehow. It's not a good offense. Not a lot of elite talent. Bad offensive line. I think we're going to see a lot of Ramondre Stevenson, a lot of Antonio Gibson running the football. A lot of checkdowns, a lot of screen passes. The Patriots very well could be one of the bottom 5 teams in football this year. Because they don't have the talent, they don't have the offensive line. I like their defense, but they just traded Matthew Judon to the Falcons, and he's a great player. Christian Barmore, I like. Bentley's a good player. He could be traded. Their secondary, Chris Gonzalez, we'll see what he got injured last year. We'll see what he can do. Jonathan Jones, still there. Godshaw's a good player. Dietrich Weiss Jr. But it's a tricky situation. What do you do? If I'm the Patriots, I'm starting Jacoby Brissett if he's healthy. Because I at least want my offensive line to get reps and see if they can improve as the season goes on before I throw my rookie quarterback out there. Because I'm not getting him injured and I'm not going through that. I want him healthy when our team's somewhat competent. Hopefully it's better next year than it is this year. Patriots were great for a long time, and they're trying to rebuild something. Trying to rebuild what they used to be, quite frankly. It's going to be hard. Patriots fans, buckle up for some suffering. Because you're not going to be good right away. It's not going to be a fun season if you're a Patriots fan. Just let you know. I'll go through their entire schedule for you. Open at Cincinnati, loss. Home to Seattle, loss. At the Jets, loss. At the 49ers, loss. That's 0-4 if you're keeping track at home. Host the Dolphins. It's in October. It's not cold enough yet. 0-5. Host the Texans. 0-6. At the Jaguars in London. They might win that game. 1-6. Host the Jets. Loss. At the Titans. Type of game they might win. At the Bears. Loss. Host the Rams. Loss. At the Dolphins in November. Loss. They'll play the Colts and the Cardinals. They'll win one of those two, so that's 3 wins. At the Bills, loss. Host the Chargers, loss. Host the Bills, loss. I think 3 wins. 3-14. 3-14 for the Patriots this year. Maybe 4-13. They squeak out a couple wins. They win 1 division game. But could they go winless in their division? Absolutely. These teams in the division are good. They're not a bunch of bums. They don't get a game where you go, okay, we get the Cardinals this week. You got to play the Jets twice, the Dolphins twice, and the Bills twice. They often give the Bills trouble, so they're going to be anyone in the division. I think it'll be the Bills. Despite the fact that they've owned the Jets for a long time, I don't see that happening. And division games are tight, but that doesn't mean you're going to win them. Drake May will play this year. I think he'll play. If I had to go over-under, I'm saying he's playing over half of their games. He's just not starting the season. Eventually, because of losses and because their schedule, he will be thrust into action for the Patriots. But it will not be week 1. And we just went through it. They will start losing games. They will lose to the Bengals and lose to the Seahawks and lose to the Jets and lose to the 49ers. I could see his first game, but that's a murderer's row of a schedule. Bengals, Seahawks, Jets, 49ers. I could see the Dolphins being his first NFL start. Back home, because they go at Jets, primetime game, nope. At 49ers, nope, not happening. Sunday afternoon against the Dolphins in Foxborough. I could see that being his first start for Drake May. But the Patriots got a tough schedule, and their team isn't very good. That's a bad combination. So buckle up, Patriots fans, because your team just isn't that good. And that's the AFC East. Let's move to the NFC East. Hope you're having fun, because I am. Football is back. Ugh, I love it. NFC East, remember this last year? Philadelphia. Wild card game. Going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the NFC South winner. Huge favorites. And they get absolutely crushed. Jason Kelce retires. Nick Sirianni looks like he's going to be fired, but he sticks around. They bring in Vic Fangio to be the new defensive coordinator. And the Eagles are under more pressure than anybody in the NFL, if you ask me. More than the Bills, more than anybody. Because of what they are, of what they represent, the talent that they have on this roster. They should be competitive. They should be the best team in the NFC, one might argue. Jalen Hurts returns after a subpar season after getting the Eagles to the Super Bowl the year before. And despite the fact that Jason Kelce is gone at center, they're hoping that this team can come together and continue to find some success. In the offseason, they lose DeAndre Swift, who goes to the Bears. They lose Fletcher Cox, who also retires, an Eagles legend. Marcus Mariota departs to the Washington football team. Nick Morrow, we talked about earlier, he departs the team, and Hassan Reddick, they trade to the New York Jets. A lot of pieces. Hassan Reddick led the Eagles in sacks the last 2 seasons. He was third in the NFL in sacks the last 2 seasons, with the 2 seasons combined. He's a great edge rusher, incredibly productive, but he wanted a new contract and they couldn't afford it. Paying Jalen big money, paying A.J. Brown big money, paying Devontae Smith as well in the offseason. But the Eagles also said, you know what? There's a really good player available. Why don't we go get him? We'll get him from our division rival. In the offseason, the Philadelphia Eagles landed Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, former second overall pick by the New York Giants, who played last year on the franchise tag. They decided not to franchise tag him again. Has been very open and honest this offseason how he was very upset that the Giants didn't want to keep him, that he had to leave New York. But he got a great deal from the Eagles, guaranteed money, and now he becomes the key force of their backfield. And when healthy, Saquon Barkley has been one of the more creative backs in football. Had 962 rushing yards last year, which wasn't great, 16th in the NFL. 6 touchdowns, which tied for 19th. Ran for 4 yards a carry, which was pretty good. But in his career, he averages 4.3 yards a carry, 35 touchdowns, 2,100 yards. He played behind a horrible offensive line the entire time he was in New York. They never addressed it, and he's hoping he gets behind a better one in Philly, which I think he will. But he was their big piece. It was Saquon Barkley and Bryce Huff on the defense, who they got from the Jets. That's why they parted with Hassan Reddick. Bryce Huff was cheaper. They say we're going to go with him. We think he can get lots of sacks in our defensive structure. And they do it. They also bring in Devin White from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. C.J. Gardner-Johnson comes back from Detroit. So we'll get more into their defense in a minute. But offensively, it's about Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts being on the same page. There was stories written this offseason. Hurts and Sirianni not on the same page. Hurts would hear a play call come into the helmet and go with a completely different play. Not listen to him. Go against his head coach. And if they're going to be successful this year, not to state the obvious, but they need to be working together, not against each other. Jalen Hurts needs to take what's there, not just throw the ball down the field every play hoping for a chunk play. That's not going to work either. Yes, you have A.J. Brown. Yes, you have Devontae Smith. Yes, you just acquired Jahan Dotson from the Washington football team. Johnny Wilson, who you get from Florida State. Paris Campbell comes over from the Indianapolis Colts. Dallas Goedert remains on this team, and he's as good as it gets. I love their offense. I'm still a Jalen Hurts fan. I still think he's one of the better quarterbacks in football. I just think he had a bad stretch. I think he played stupid at times. He made poor decisions. He didn't love his head coach. The harmony is back. They're in a better place. I'm banking on that. The team looks at itself and goes, the NFC is better than it was, but it's still not overly threatening. Our division is easier this year than it has been in years past, and I'll get to that in a minute. We can do this. We're going to win this division easy. We can be the best team in the NFC, which they can. On defense, The secondary was a disaster last year. It was their Achilles heel. It was the biggest reason why they failed. They draft Cooper DeJean from Iowa, which is a rare thing. He's a white cornerback. You look at Quinyon Mitchell. They also have him from Toledo. He played last year at Toledo. Good player. And I think they expect him to be a good player as well. They have depth now. Quinyon, Cooper DeJean, Darius Slay remains in Philly. C.J. Gardner-Johnson comes back. You still have James Bradbury and Avonte Maddox sitting on the bench as of right now. Devin White, Bryce Huff, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Josh Sweat. They're going to get after the quarterback. They're going to need their secondary to settle in, to make plays, to not give up 40-yard plays like it's going out of style. But Vic Fangio is a good defensive coordinator. Didn't work out as a head coach, but he's great on defense. He's from Philly. He's motivated to be there. He wants to be successful, bring a championship home. But you have Jason Kelsey gone. Cam Jurgens moves over to center from right guard. Mekhi Becton now becomes the right guard for this team. Still have Lane Johnson at right tackle, as good as it gets. Jordan Mailata at left tackle. Landon Dickerson. Their offensive line's still great. Still great. Cam Jurgens, I think, will be fine at center. We'll see. The Eagles do have places where they could falter. Absolutely. Nick Sirianni coming back is one of the more puzzling and one of the more surprising decisions of the offseason. But the Eagles said, we're not going to do that. We had a bump in the road. We believe in this core. We believe we can get back to the Super Bowl. Despite the fact that you had Bill Belichick, who was available, and you had Pete Carroll, who was available, and the former Titans coach, who's, I can't think of right now his name, good coach, who's advising at the University of Oregon. It's going to bother me, so I have to look it up. Former Patriots, great, multiple-time Super Bowl champion. Mike Vrabel. As I start to Google it, it comes to mind. Mike Vrabel's available. They don't scoop him up. So, Nick Sirianni is under the most pressure of any coach in the NFL. If they don't get to the NFC Championship game, he will be fired. If they don't win the division, it'll be a disappointing season. To me, they are by far the best team in this division. They have the best quarterback in this division. They have the best wide receiving core in this division. They have the best offensive line in this division. They don't have the best defense. We'll talk about the Cowboys. They don't have the best pass rush. But these other teams are missing pieces too. These other teams have faults. The Eagles are on par with the San Francisco 49ers when it comes to how good they are. Expectations. If you look at their schedule, they open in Brazil against the Packers. That's a Friday night game, by the way, exclusively on Peacock. They then play the following Sunday night against the Falcons in Philadelphia. At the Saints, at the Buccaneers, rematch of that wild card game. Host the Browns, at the Giants, at the Bengals. Host the Jags, at the Cowboys. Host the Commies, at the Rams, at the Ravens. Host the Panthers, host the Steelers. Host the Commies, host the Cowboys, host the Giants. Not an easy schedule by any means. Having to go to Baltimore, tough. Having to go to the Rams, tough. I believe the Commanders are better than people are giving them credit for. We'll get to that in a minute. Jaguars are I'm still trying to figure them out before we do the AFC South preview show, because they are either hit or a big miss. I think they could be first in their division. They could be third in their division. I trust the Bengals. I like Cincinnati. I love Joe Burrow. Giants stink. Browns, tough team. Bucks will be a tough team. Falcons, who the hell knows? Kirk D. Cousins. I do love myself some Kirk D. Cousins. There's no quarterback that Jesus loves more than Kirk D. Cousins, so you know I'm on his side there. So Eagles are really good. Eagles should be competing with every team in the NFL for the Super Bowl. If we look at the betting favorites right now, Super Bowl odds, FanDuel Sportsbook. That's where I get all my information because FanDuel is the best. Number 1, Kansas City, plus 550, followed by the 49ers at plus 600. You have the Ravens at plus 1100, Detroit at plus 1200, and you have Philadelphia. So they are currently in 5th at plus 1300 with odds to win the Super Bowl. It's a good number to get them at. Lions are good. 49ers are good. 49ers have some contract stuff to figure out. So, tricky season, huge season for Sirianni and the Eagles, huge season for Jalen Hurts and for Howie Roseman, the GM. But this team could be in the Super Bowl come February. They are that good, period. Let's move to the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott, heading into the final year of his contract. Mike McCarthy, heading into the final year of his contract. All kinds of pressure, as always. People expecting the Dallas Cowboys to get to the Super Bowl, to win a playoff game, to do something, to do anything but get blown out by the Green Bay Packers at Jerry World like they were last year. No talk of a Dak extension. No talk of a McCarthy extension. Micah Parsons did not get a new contract in the offseason. Now, CeeDee Lamb, who has not participated in training camp all summer long, who did not play in the preseason, finally got his contract. He signed the second biggest non-quarterback contract in league history today. 4 years, $134 million, which is $6 million less than the total value that Justin Jefferson got. He'll also be making $1 million less per season than Justin Jefferson. Becomes the second highest paid wide receiver in football. I'll just pull up some of the CeeDee Lamb contract news here. 4 years, worth up to $136 million. $34 million per year. Lamb's deal includes $100 million guaranteed and a $38 million signing bonus. So, pretty good deal. Also, I don't know why it took this long if you're just going to give him the deal anyway. It's stupid, but that's Jerry Jones for you. But CeeDee Lamb is back. He will be playing. He'll be ready for week 1. Now, the Cowboys in the offseason, they lost Dan Quinn, their defensive coordinator, who left to become the head coach of the Washington Commanders, otherwise known in this podcast as the Washington football team. We'll talk about him in a minute. Michael Gallup, released, then goes to the Raiders, then retires. Tyron Smith goes to the Jets. Tony Pollard is now a member of the Tennessee Titans. Tyler Biadasz, the new center for the Washington football team. Neville Gallimore leaves. Dante Fowler is now a member of the Jaguars. Stephon Gilmore is now a member of the Vikings. Dorrance Armstrong is now a member of the Washington football team. So a lot of that defense, some important players, go with Dan Quinn to Washington. They add Eric Kendricks, veteran linebacker, and Ezekiel Elliott returns. They didn't do a whole lot in free agency, to be completely honest. And you look up, like, Ezekiel Elliott's their number 1 running back on the depth chart. That scares the hell out of me. He's not a number 1 running back. Rico Dowdle is better than him currently. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks remains in Dallas. He was fine. Jalen Tolbert, they're hoping to see a step out of him. Kevontae Turbin, he's more of a special teams guy. Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker, Peyton Hendershot, three-headed monster at tight end. I think all three of those guys could be more productive than any other wide receiver not named CeeDee Lamb this year for the Cowboys, quite frankly, in the way they run their offense. I like their tight end room. I like the versatility of it. I like Dak as a quarterback. Offensive line, Biotish is gone, so Brock Hoffman becomes their new starting center. Terrence Steele, Zach Martin, the great right guard, Tyler Smith, Tyler Guyton, both first-round picks remain on that offensive line. So it stays intact for the most part. DeMarcus Lawrence, still a Cowboy. Mozzie Smith, who they took out of Michigan a couple years ago. Micah Parsons, of course, one of the best defensive players in football, still looking to win his first Defensive Player of the Year. I mentioned Eric Kendricks comes in. Deron Bland's out the first 6 to 8 weeks. He was a Pro Bowler last year. Needs surgery on his foot. Trayvon Diggs, Jordan Lewis. It's a good team. It's not a great team. I don't think it's a team that's going to win this division. They have worse odds to win the division than the Eagles. Worse odds to win the Super Bowl than the Eagles. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to have to... I think if you're a fantasy person, I'd be taking CeeDee Lamb. I think he's going to get a ton of catches. It wouldn't shock me if he leads the NFL in catches this year because he's going to be asked to do a lot for this team. They're going to put him in a lot of different situations because they really don't have that many other pieces other than him. They used to throw the ball to Tony Pollard. They're not throwing the ball to Zeke unless they want to lose 5 yards. He runs like he's running in sand. He's slow. He's old. He's past his prime. It's just not going to work. I have a take that I'm kind of wafting over. I'm still considering this take because it's spicy. And it might be crazy. But you look at the Cowboys. They open at Cleveland. Not an easy game. Host the Saints. Host the Ravens. At the Giants. Steelers. At the Steelers. Host Detroit. At San Francisco. At Atlanta. Host the Philadelphia Eagles. Host the Texans. At the Commies. Giants. Host the Bengals. Panthers. Bucks. Not an easy game. At the Giants. Commanders. Can you find 10 wins in there? Yes. But could you find games where you expect them to win and they lose? Yeah. Could they lose to the Browns week 1? Absolutely. Could they lose to the Ravens at home? Yes. Lose that game at the Steelers? Why not? Lose at the 49ers? They always do, so why wouldn't they this time? Lose to the Lions? Yes. Go to Atlanta and suffer a loss? Yeah. Falcons, really good offense, suspect defense, still trying, I don't know, maybe. Lose to their division rival, lose to their in-state rival, the Houston Texans. Lose 1 of 2 to the Commanders. I think so. Lose to the Bengals. Yeah. Buccaneers upset them. Why not? What I'm getting at, and you know what? This is my spicy take. This might be my spiciest take of the entire season. I believe the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders, are going to finish with a better record than the Dallas Cowboys. I believe the Commanders are going to finish second in this division. The Cowboys are going to miss the playoffs and move off of Mike McCarthy and move off of Dak Prescott. Now, that might be looked at as a stupid decision to move off of Dak because there's not that many great quarterbacks in the league. But they'll go to the draft or they'll do something different because eventually you keep doing the same thing over and over and you get the same result. Somebody will say, you know what, this is kind of stupid, Jerry. Why are we doing this? And he'll go, yeah, you know what, you're right. We don't owe Dak anything right now. Let's make a different decision. Washington went through quarterback after quarterback. The Washington football team has their 8th different starting quarterback in the last 8 years, which is an incredible statistic. 8 straight years with 8 different starting quarterbacks. Let's get to the Washington football team, otherwise known as the Washington Commanders. Riverboat Ron Rivera, was fired in the offseason. Now working at the NFL Network. He's out. Dan Quinn, former defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, becomes the head coach. DQ was a head coach with the Falcons. He got them to a Super Bowl, and then they melted down and lost to the Patriots, and probably the most embarrassing loss in sports history. But I like Dan Quinn. His players play hard for him. He was a successful defensive coordinator in Seattle. He was a successful defensive coordinator with the Cowboys. So we'll see what he can do as a head coach. Commanders also lose Antonio Gibson to the Patriots. They trade Sam Howell to Seattle to become the backup quarterback to Geno Smith. So you go, Sam Howell's gone. They bring in Marcus Mariota, but he's very much a backup quarterback. Who's the Commanders' quarterback? That would be one Jaden Daniels, formerly of Arizona State, then transfers to LSU and becomes one of the best college quarterbacks over the last couple of years. Reigning Heisman Trophy winner, playing under Brian Kelly at LSU, defeating Nick Saban at Alabama in his last year. Jaden Daniels is incredibly versatile. He can throw the football. He can rush the football. To me, he's a smart player. And they get him with the second overall pick. And I like him a lot. Is he as good as Caleb Williams, who we'll talk about when we talk about the Bears? Probably not. But he's pretty damn good. And the Commanders' offense, again, you look at it on paper and go, it's not flashy. Terry McLaurin remains one of the more underrated receivers in football. He'll catch anything. He'll run any route. He'll take any hit. It doesn't matter. He's a team guy. Zacchaeus, they bring over from the Falcons. A guy who can run the ball down the field, make big plays. Luke McCaffrey. That last name sound familiar? Luke McCaffrey, brother of one Christian McCaffrey. Played at Wisconsin. Productive receiver. They're hoping he can give them a bump. De'Ami Brown, second-year wide receiver from UNC. Zach Ertz comes over as a tight end in the offseason. They also added, I mentioned Biadasz, Dante Fowler, Austin Eckler comes over at running back from the Chargers. Remember him? Dorrance Armstrong, Jeremy Chin comes over from Carolina. They were the most active team in free agency of any team. They added the most players. They spent the most money on free agents. New ownership, new GM, and Adam Peters, who comes over from San Francisco. They're trying to build something here. Keys this year. Nick Allegretti, multiple-time Super Bowl champion with the Chiefs. Tyler Biadasz, Sam Cosmi, Andrew Wiley, Super Bowl champion with the Kansas City Chiefs at right tackle. They're building an offensive line that has experience, that haven't played together before, so they need it to come together. They need it to solidify. But they've guys that played in the league before, that have that experience, that guys that have gone up against Micah Parsons, that have gone up against the Fletcher Coxes, the great Philadelphia Eagles pass rushers of old. So they know what they're getting into with these players. So I like that. The wide receiving core, you might look at it and go, it's a little underwhelming. Maybe they'll trade for Brandon Ayuk before the season, still unsigned with the San Francisco 49ers. That would be huge. But you look at it, I like Brian Robertson Jr., formerly of Alabama. I mentioned Austin Eckler comes over. Chris Rodriguez Jr. from KU, not a bad player either. So they have depth. I like their quarterback a lot. He needs to know when to slide, not take huge hits. But I think the offense can be good. Defensively, Dorrance Armstrong, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Clelin Ferrell, former first-round pick. Frankie Louvu, who comes over, another free agent signing from Carolina. Bobby Wagner, future Hall of Famer, Seattle Seahawk great. Dante Fowler, Jeremy Chin. They draft Mike Sangstrill from Michigan. He won a national championship last year. Dan Quinn can build good defenses. Make them competitive. Let them figure each other out. Be productive. I don't hate this team. I think they can be I think they can compete with the Cowboys. Not with the Eagles, but I think they can be better than the Cowboys. Jaden Daniels will show that he is their franchise quarterback, the future of the WFT. And I expect the Commanders to have a better record by the end of the year than the Dallas Cowboys. That might be my hottest take of the season. But I truly believe it because I look at this team and go, I really like their quarterback because I watched him a ton in college because I love college football. I know Biadasz can play. I know Dorrance Armstrong can play because I saw them do it in Dallas. Jeremy Chin was a really good player on Carolina. He was just on a shit team. Bobby Wagner's a future Hall of Famer. He had over 140 tackles last year. He's not long in the tooth yet. Eckler, he wasn't very productive with the Chargers. He's not the number one running back. Brian Robertson Jr. is going to get the majority of the carries. Give it to Austin Eckler in the red zone. Give it to Austin Eckler, third and short. Get those first down yardage. And you have yourself a winning formula. It could blow up. The Commanders have always seemed to have failure. I still hate their name. They are the Washington football team, just like I love Utah Hockey Club. Love it. Love that name. Love it. Simple. No bullshit commander or guardian or some other bullshit woke thing you want to throw on it. Dan Quinn, first-year head coach, new coach bump, rookie quarterback who's played a lot. He's not like a rookie quarterback coming in that's had no experience. He played a ton in college, played in the Pac-12, played in the ACC, went up against Nick Saban, went up against Kirby Smart. He's ready to go. De'Ami Brown's going to have a sneaky good season at wide receiver for the Washington football team. I think they're going to have a better record than the Dallas Cowboys. My hot take for the season. And finally, the team that I have finishing last in the NFC East, the New York Football Giants. The New York Giants, there's nothing really appealing about this team. They have a quarterback that they spent too much money on, and they're going to want to move off of as soon as possible, meaning at the end of this season. This will be Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones' final year as a member of the New York Giants. They took him too high, they reached, and they've been paying for it ever since. Brian Daboll, a coach on the hot seat as well. Lost a ton of weight. You might see him and go, who the hell is that new head coach? No, it's Brian Daboll. They lose Saquon Barkley to the Eagles, an in-division rival. They lose Xavier McKinney to the Packers, one of the better defensive players. Paris Campbell departs the team. What do? They draft Malik Neighbors, who play with Jaden Daniels at LSU. Really good receiver, but receiver's only as good as the quarterback. And I don't think their quarterback's very good, so I worry about how productive Malik Neighbors will be in year one. They trade for Brian Burns, who comes over from Carolina. He got a bunch of money in the trade. Really good pass rusher. But again, Drew Lock comes in to become quarterback 2. Devin Singletary, and they bring in Isaiah McKenzie from the Bills. Keys for this team: can Daniel Jones stay healthy? And if he does stay healthy, how good does he play? Is he still fumbling the ball a ton? Is he still throwing the ball to the other team? Because we've seen that a ton from him. Jalen Hyatt, Malik Neighbors are explosive players that can be big play potential. Jalen Hyatt was that guy at Tennessee. Malik Neighbors was that guy at LSU. Darius Slayton can be productive. I like Daniel Bellinger, their tight end. Devin Singletary at running back, not so much, but their offensive line, who, it's kind of the same crew coming back. Wasn't that good last year. They gave up a ton of sacks. They gave up the fourth most sacks in football. Okay? I like Brian Burns. I like Kayvon Thibodeau. I like Dexter Lawrence II. Azeez Olajari, pretty good. So I think they're going to get after some quarterbacks. They're going to sack guys in their division in games. But I don't think they can overcome just how much better other teams are. And then you watch them and go, we stink. We have the worst quarterback in our division. We probably have the worst receiving core in our own division. They open hosting the Vikings, at the Commanders, at the Browns, host the Cowboys, at the Seahawks, host the Bengals, host the Eagles, at Pittsburgh, host the Commies, Panthers. They don't have a brutal schedule, but I don't think that they're good enough to overcome it. That's the problem. I think the Giants will be picking inside the top 7-8 picks in the 2025 NFL draft, and they will be looking for a new quarterback. They'll be looking for a quarterback in college this year to take a leap so that they can take him to be the future of their franchise, because Daniel Jones is not it. They never should have given him a four-year, $140 million extension. It was dumb at the time. We talked about it the second it happened, and they've regretted it ever since. They will be the last team in this division. I didn't go over the Commanders' schedule with you guys when I said they'd have a better record than the Cowboys. They open at the Bucs, host the Giants, at the Bengals, Cardinals, Browns, Ravens, Panthers, Bears, Giants, Steelers, Eagles, Cowboys, Titans, Saints, Falcons. I think they got to win some of these games. The Saints, Falcons games, you're playing the NFC South, play the Panthers. There are wins in there that they're going to find. Find an upset somewhere where Jaden Daniels just plays incredible, showing people what he's made of. It's going to be close, but I think they're going to have a better record than the Cowboys. I think they're going to flirt. They're not going to make the playoffs, but I think they'll flirt with it. Because I do think the NFC is better than previous years. I think there's a certain division that we're going to get to that I think is going to have 3 playoff teams out of one division. I'm not telling you who it is right now, but it's going to be one division. We'll preview it. They're going to have 3 playoff teams. Because that division and those teams in that division are so good. And I firmly believe that. That was the AFC and NFC East previews. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I love doing it. It's so much fun for me. I love football. I geek out over it. It's a lot of information. I realize that. The next set is going to be AFC South and NFC South. So that will come likely on Friday. So we'll do that one on Friday. Another show Wednesday night where we just talk about what's happening in the world of sports. So far this week, we'll preview college football. I'm going to react to... You see what I already got on tap. We'll preview college football that night. We're going to talk the UFC card this weekend. We're going to preview the Tour Championship at East Lake in Georgia this coming weekend with the top 30 players. Only one Canadian in the field in Taylor Pendrith, with Keegan Bradley winning the BMW this past weekend in an awesome moment for him, celebrating with his dad. So that was phenomenal. So that opens on Thursday. So we'll preview that on Wednesday night's episode. We'll also talk U.S. Open. That started today. I have it on in the background right now, prime time at the U.S. Open. I love this, night matches. This week you're going to get night matches. You're going to get college football. You're going to get baseball. Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani doing crazy stuff for the respective teams. So we'll talk about that later in the week. But AFC South, NFC South coming on Friday. So keep yourself locked and loaded for that. Thank you all for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe. This is To The Point.